everyone, it's Tom Mackie here. Now today we're going to be talking about some of the classic mistakes that people make in landscape photography. Now over the years I've seen a whole manner of mistakes made, but and this list is not limited to what I'm mentioning here today, because there's quite a lot of them, but these are the key ones that I have come across time and time again. And often I make these mistakes myself, and I've got to catch myself and think about what I'm doing. So let's start with number one. I think the most important thing is to have a really sturdy tripod. Now, often people will buy really cheap tripods and not think about a tripod, and which reminds me of a video that we made about, oh yes, buying tripods. Here's a link for that. Have a look at this. This will actually tell you about what to look for when you're buying a tripod. Now, so it is very important to set your camera up on a very sturdy tripod. But first, before you do that, here's a nice little tip I do. Now, often you go out to a location, you have your camera already on your tripod, you set it up, and it's set at the height that you use it at. Now, I like to buy tripods that actually go as tall as I am. I'm over 6 foot, and I don't like crunching down like this all the time. I see photographers doing that, and I think, gosh, boy, when they get old, they're gonna have bad backs. So I like to stand up straight, but in doing so, you're shooting from your own height. So I would recommend actually taking that camera off the tripod, or don't even set it up initially. Just walk around with your camera, go high and go low, just try different perspectives and find out where you need to set your tripod up first. So something that I see time and time again is lack of thought in composition. Now, composition is so important when creating a brilliant shot. It's the difference between a good shot and a brilliant shot. If you don't know what your subject is, and you're not telling a story within that frame and drawing your viewer's eye to that main subject, you've got a really weak composition. So I think if you determine what you're shooting, what made you pick up the camera and actually point it at the scene, determine what is it in that scene that actually is the most important part of it. So we have another video coming out specifically on composition, so stay tuned for that. That'll go into more depth about different elements of producing a really great shot using compositional tools. So the next thing on our list are wonky horizons, uneven horizon lines. It's kind of a pet peeve, and I make this mistake a lot. You know, I think I've got the camera straight, and my legs might be sinking in the mud, so by the time I finish doing the exposure, I've got this wonky horizon. Now, one thing I do, I choose to use a spirit level on the hot shoe. I know you guys are going to be saying, oh, but what about that display level? I really don't like having to go into camera displays and use that. When I have a hot shoe spirit level, I instantly, when I'm setting the camera up on the tripod, I'm setting the ball head and straightening it out. It's all one fluid motion. So that's worked for me over the years, but as with anything, it's personal preference. So whatever works for you, use that. But just make sure you get those horizons straight initially. I know you can correct these later in Lightroom quite easily and quickly, but it's nice to get it done in the field. So next on our list is the overuse of wide-angle lenses. A lot of people think that landscape photography is about putting a wide-angle lens on the camera, getting as much in that frame as possible, and you've got a great shot. It doesn't work that way. In fact, it works just the opposite way. If you don't have all the elements in that scene to create a dynamic image using a wide-angle lens, it tends to get lost. Everything gets a lot smaller. So I think I would make sure that you're not overusing that wide-angle lens. Try using other lenses. I personally like, and I've said in previous videos, I love that 24 to 70 mil range, that focal length range. I use that for probably, most of my shots, 80% of my shots. It's something that I can quite quickly zoom in and crop, and I'm cropping out things that don't actually add anything to the scene itself. So wide-angle lenses definitely have their place in landscape photography, but just make sure that you don't overuse them. So our next point is actually an extension of our last point, using wide-angle lenses. Now, creating an image that has dimension to it using a wide-angle lens, you need to include your foreground, midground, and background in order to create a really dynamic shot. So remember what I said about you're telling a story. So make sure you've got something to guide your viewer through the scene. So if you create a one-dimensional image, it's kind of flat and static. So remember, try to create some dimension by adding foreground, midground, and background. Okay, next is the wrong kind of light. Now there is no such thing as poor lighting, only the poor choice of subject for that light, that particular light. Now I always tend to work with the lighting that I have, and I choose the subject accordingly. So say for example, if I have overcast lighting, I tend to photograph woodlands, forests, and waterfalls, gardens, things like that. But if I have more strong direct lighting, then I'll choose a subject matter that actually fits that. I think that's one of the mistakes that people do make, is that they have really great subject matter, but the wrong sort of lighting for that subject matter. So that brings me on to planning the shot. There's often times when I'll see great compositions, but really poor lighting. Now, a lot of photographers will just turn up no matter what lighting conditions they have and take whatever they can get then. But I'll often look at a scene and I'll think, well, this is a really nice scene, but it would be much better backlit or side lit or overcast lighting or whatever. So I'll plan to be in that location during those conditions. Okay, so next on the list is a mistake that happens time and time again with photographers. I see that they've got this brilliant subject, but they have unwanted details coming in from the edges of the frame. Always watch the edges of your frame and make sure that you don't have that unwanted branch coming in from the corner, or a power line that you didn't see, or a rock. You know, when you're photographing, say, a lake, and you might have some rocks in the foreground, you'll have a rock just breaking the edge of the frame, and that just is distracting to the composition. So again, pay particular attention to the edges of the frame. Okay, next on our list is blown out highlights. This is really difficult and almost impossible to recover highlights if you blow them out. So keep an eye on your histogram. Make sure that you understand how a histogram works. Remember, if you go to the right too far, you're going to blow your highlights out. Too far to the left, and you block up your shadows. So have a nice even histogram so you're capturing all that information on that image. Now there's several things you can do to make sure that your highlights aren't blown out. You can create multiple exposures and combine them later. Or if you have something like a D850 like I have, it's fantastic for exposure latitude. And I find that I can now expose for my highlights and then let the shadows go, and I can bring those up in post. It's great to have that ability to do that, but I think a lot of it is about controlling the light. So I'm using filtration often to control that histogram, make sure I have all the information there in that one shot. Like I've said before in past videos, I don't like spending a lot of time behind the computer. I want to make sure I get that right in the field. So I do that by way of using filtration or possibly multiple exposures. But if you get it right in the field, it saves a lot of time afterwards in post-processing. So I hope you found this video useful. It's designed to be a bit of a checklist of the common mistakes that are made in landscape photography and mainly how to avoid them. Now make sure you do check our other videos out in our library, because they do cover some of the issues that we've spoken about here today in more depth. But as usual, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And we'll see you again soon in the next video. Bye for now.